So one really important thing to note is you will come across clients who are very hypermobile. Typically, it'll be females. However, I have seen some males during my training career. But people like this are always complaining that they're very tight, that their muscles feel like really tight. However, they're stretching all sorts of crazy directions. They can easily palm the floor. They can really, they're just Gumby. They can bend in all sorts of weird directions. Yet they're always complaining about being really tight, so they keep stretching. And what's going on here is that their joints are so mobile that it's basically locking down the muscles around it to create some stability, because that joint is craving stability. So it'll lock down the joints and it'll keep the muscles really tight, because otherwise a person would just kind of fall apart because they're so hypermobile. So something really to be aware of. Whenever I'm screening somebody, if they can touch both hands to the floor, it's immediately like a little bit of a alarm bell. Not really an alarm bell. It's not something to be really scared of, but just kind of like, as soon as someone palms the floor, this is kind of the first thing I'm thinking to myself. I'm like, is this person hypermobile? And so you can kind of ask them some questions like, do you constantly stretch, but you always feel tight? That's kind of a good question. You can also do what's called the Baton's hypermobility score. And this takes like 3 seconds to do, honestly. You just ask them, can they touch their thumb to their wrist, which I clearly cannot do? Can they bend their pinky more than 90 degrees, which again, I cannot do? Can they hyperextend their elbows? Let me make sure clearly I'm not hyperextending my elbow. Can they hyperextend their knees? And can they palm the floor? This is just a really quick screen just to see if someone's hypermobile or not. And you'll be able to tell real quickly who the hypermobile clients are, because again, they'll palm the floor, their knees will be super hyperextended, their elbows will be hyperextended, they'll easily touch their thumbs to their wrists. And even if someone's kind of like on the threshold of being like hypermobile, I would just still kind of treat them like that, because you want to treat them a little bit differently than normal clients. Because normal clients, you can stretch them, you can mobilize them, and that's good for them because their stiffness is coming from their muscles. Versus a hypermobile client, you don't want to stretch them because that stretching is just going to cause more problems. And they can stretch through ranges of motion that they have zero control over. So something really important for hypermobile clients is using their muscles and getting stronger. One thing to be really aware of and cognizant of when you're training a hypermobile client, again, don't allow them to try and get them to stop stretching, because it's, again, being counterproductive. It's like stretching something that's already loose in an effort to make it tighter. That's not going to happen. It's just going to make things worse, basically. But when they're working out, they'll tend to lock out their joints, and you'll see it all the time. They'll lock out their joints and they'll rely on the joint locking out to provide stability for them. Perfect example. Single leg deadlift. You'll see it immediately on single leg deadlifts people. Their knees are always crazy locked, and they're always doing the exercise with locked knees. And you can see it a lot on push-ups, where they do a push-up and then they're hypermobilizing their elbows to provide that stability at the top of the push-up. So make them aware of that. If you see that, make them really aware of that and force them to slow things down, force them to use their muscles. And over time, it'll typically get better. It won't always get better. Sometimes you're going to get people who have like pretty serious issues and they may need a referral to a physical therapist. But it is definitely something you can help with. And at the very least, if you just make them cognizant of what's going on with their body, it'll give them a lot more awareness and it'll help them focus on the muscles doing the work rather than using the joints to provide that stability.